We were all taught in
Welcome to the
school
new
that the
Camtasia
world is
Studio.
made of stuff.
We encourage
of
you to
matter,
watch and
of
play with
mass,
this Getting
of
Started
atoms.
project video to
Atoms
learn
make
some
up
of the most
molecules,
important
molecules make up
concepts of
materials,
using the
and
editor.
everything is made of that.
If you want
But
more
atoms
in-depth
actually
tutorials that
are
will walk
mostly
you through
empty.
the entire process
For example,
of
if this
recording,
ball
editing,
were
and
the
sharing your
nucleus
videos,
of an
then
atom,
please watch the
a
Getting
proton
Started
and a
tutorials
hydrogen
using
atom,
this
for
link under
example,
the Help menu.
then the electron
The editor is
circling
divided
this,
up
which
into
would
three main
describe the
areas:
outer limits of that
equipment,
atom,
the
would be out
timeline,
by
and
that
the
mountain
canvas.
over there, roughly 20
The
miles away.
canvas is where you see your video
And
during
everything in
playback
between
and can
is
move,
empty.
resize, and
In fact, the
reposition
universe
all
is
media
mostly empty.
however you want.
Within all the
The
atoms and
timeline
molecules,
is where you
all
assemble
the
and
space
edit your video.
within the particles
At the
take
top
up
of the timeline, tick marks
an
represent time in
insignificant
terms
amount
of
of
minutes and
the
seconds.
volume of an atom.
When building a video,
Dr. William
you'll work
Tiller
in a
said,
horizontal manner,
within all
beginning
the
from the
atoms
left
and
moving
molecules,
sequentially
all
through
the
time toward
space
the
within
right.
them, the particles
tracks are
take
layered
up
on
an
top of each other,
insignificant
so media
amount
you
of
add
the
on higher
volume of an
tracks
atom.
is viewed on top of media on lower
But
tracks
it's
in
the
the canvas.
particles that supposedly make
For
up
example,
matter.
this callout is
So
placed on top of
scientists
the video
focus
track
on
the
them in their
timeline,
experiments.
and therefore is on top of the
And
screen
as the
video on the
research
canvas.
continued, scientists
If I drag
discovered
the
that the
video
very
track on
small
top of the
particles
callout
they
on the
were
timeline,
finding
the
did
callout
not
is now
behave
hidden
as they
behind
were
the video
supposed
on the
to.
canvas.
Basically,
Use the zoom
Newtonian
slider to
physics
magnify the
only
view
worked
of the
well
timeline.
on
This
large
is very
objects,
helpful when making precise
objects
cuts
we
and
can see
selections,
with our
like
naked
removing
eyes,
in your audio.
but not on a subatomic
New
level.
media can be dragged and dropped on an
This
existing
was the
track,
beginning of
or a
quantum
new track
physics,
is automatically created
and the
when
most
media is
famous
dropped at this
experiment that
location
got
at the top of the
everyone
timeline.
opening their minds to new
To change the
possibilities
position of
about
a
the
clip
universe
on the timeline,
and
just
how it
drag
works is
To
called
change
the
the
double
duration
slit
of a clip,
experiment.
drag the edges
Let's
in
make
either
sure we
direction.
understand this double slit experiment
An
so
important
far.
part of the timeline is the playhead.
When we shoot matter,
To view your
like
video,
a BB
click
or
play.
a marble,
Notice
at a
how the
barrier
video
with
and the
two
timeline's
slits,
playhead stay in
we
sync.
get two bright streaks on
Click
the screen
anywhere along the
behind
timeline,
in
and the
line with
playhead
the
moves
slits,
to that point.
like this.
To remove a portion of your video, make a selection
And when
with
we
the
shoot
green in
waves,
point and red
like
out
waves
point.
of water, through a
Then
barrier
click
with
the
two
cut
slits,
If
one
you don't
wave
want media
becomes
cut on a
two
specific
waves
track,
on the other
just click
side
the
of the
lock
barrier,
icon.
and when two
If you
waves
make a
hit,
mistake while editing,
they
press
interfere with each other.
Ctrl+Z on the keyboard to
If
undo.
the top of one wave
Or choose
aligns
Edit
with the top
Undo.
of another wave, it's
Double-click
called
the playhead to
constructive
deselect.
interference, and the result is a
Next, we'll
new
look at the
and bigger
clip bin
wave.
in the library.
But
The
if the
clip bin
top
holds
of one
recordings,
wave
audio
aligns
files,
with the
images,
bottom
and
of
title
another
slides being
wave,
used in the
it's
project you're
called
currently working
destructive
on.
interference.
The
And the
library
result
stores video
is that they
clips,
cancel
intros,
each other out,
callouts, title
and there's
slides,
no
and
wave
other
at
media
all.
assets you want to use from project
And
to
when
project.
constructive and
It is
destructive interference
pre-populated with
happen
professional
together,
content you can use
you
in your
get an
videos.
interference pattern
You
on
can
the back
download more
screen
media
that
from our
looks like
website by
this.
clicking this link. You'll find a lot more music, callouts, and animated titles to
Now,
use in your projects.
if we shoot an
and it's all
electron,
free.
which we have
Once
always
you
thought
find
of
something
as
you
a particle,
like this callout,
a little
for example,
piece of matter,
just drag it to a
through
track
a
on the
barrier
timeline
with
and
two
resize
slits,
and reposition it as
you would
needed.
think we would get a pattern on the back screen
Double-click the
that
callout on
particles
the
make,
canvas to open the
like
callouts
this.
tab and edit the text, or change any of
But
the
we
text
don't.
properties like color or
Instead,
size.
we get an interference pattern that waves make.
You can find
like
a number
this.
of other callouts to use in your projects by expanding this Shapes menu.
The conclusion is that
You've
electrons,
probably
which
noticed
are
the
the
video
building
zooming in
blocks
and out
of
at
what we
times.
call
For
reality,
example, here when
are
it's zooming
not
into the
solid
timeline.
particles at all,
To learn more about
but
adding
exist
and
as
customizing
waves
zoom
as
and
well.
pan animations to your video,
In this
check out the other
waveform,
Getting
they
Started
are
tutorials
called
on our
quanta,
website.
which is why
We've
the
talked
study
about
of
some
how
of the
they
tabs
behave
already,
is
but be
called
sure to
quantum
explore the
physics.
others for adding and editing special effects.
But that's not the end of the
if
double
they don't
slit
all show up
experiment.
as tabs, click on the More
Let's
tab
rejoin
to explore
Captain
others,
Quantum,
like the
where he
speech-to-text
Electron is
capabilities
very
and
peculiar in
captions.
the sense that
and
when
the
we are not
improved
looking,
quizzing.
electron can be here,
Also,
can be there,
transitions
or
can
can be
now
over
be dragged
there
directly
in the
to the
corner
timeline
of this room.
and added on top
It can
of
be all
clips.
all over this room, so to speak.
So we've shown a few ways you can navigate
But
and edit
whenever
your
we
video.
look,
But
this
how
is
do you
the
get
strange
content
thing
into your
about
video?
these electrons.
To make
Whenever
a
we
new screen
look,
recording,
we
click
always
the Record
find
the Screen
them
button.
to be in one
If you already have an
particular
audio
Geiger
or
counter,
video recording you'd
although
like
we
to
may have a
use,
room
click the
full of
Import
Geiger
Media
counters.
button.
We never
When you're done with your
hear
video
the Geiger
project,
counter
you'll need to
sticking
click
all
the
over the
Produce
room.
and Share button to create
This
a
is
shareable
the
video.
fundamentally important stuff
Expand
about
this menu
the
to see a
electron.
variety of presets.
Was here
We We have a
that
new video
physicists
player that plays
step
back your
forever
MP4
into the
video and
strange,
includes
never
other
world
interactive
of
features
quantum events.
like table of contents,
What is
closed
matter?
captions, quizzes, and even
Marbles or
hotspots.
waves?
And
These
waves
features
of
are
what?
available when hosting your video on
And what does an observer
TechSmithScreencast.com
have to do with
or the video
anything?
and player on your own web server.
The observer.
This player provides
collapsed
playback on
the
multiple
wave
devices with
functions
just one video, whether it's a
simply
phone, tablet,
observing.
laptop, or desktop computer.
Particles
Well, it's
are
time
really
for you
what
to
they
try
seem to
Camtasia
be.
Studio
They're
for yourself
momentary
using the content on the
manifestations,
timeline,
momentary
or better yet,
poppings
create your own.
of this deeper,
We have lots of free tutorials on our
imaginary
website,
realm,
and I recommend
this
you begin with the
wave-like
Getting
realm,
Started series.
this implicate
Also,
order,
the help
as
file
David
inside
Bohm
Camtasia
would
Studio
say
tells
it,
you how to
this
use each of the
quantum
Camtasia
wavy
Studio features and
function,
applications.
as quantum physicists might talk about
One
it.
last thing. If you
in
ever
which
want to
there is
open
no
this Getting
particle.
Started
There's
project
just
again
this
to view or
waviness
practice with,
which
use this link
can
here.
spontaneously
Thanks for watching,
pop
and we
out
hope you
as
enjoy
particles.
Camtasia Studio.
Once again, let's make sure we understand, because this is so important. As we said earlier, when we shoot an electron toward a barrier with two slits, without watching what it does at the barrier, we get an interference pattern like this. But when we watch or measure what happens at the barrier, the electron becomes a particle again and makes a particle pattern on the screen behind, like this. In physics, this is called the measurement problem, because the nature of an electron changes when you look at it or try to measure it. It collapses from being a wave into a particle in a specific location in space and time, which is what we see as reality. This is called collapsing the wave function. Remember that term, collapsing the wave function, because we'll talk more about it later. This means that an electron, the core element of what we call our solid physical reality, is only a solid particle, is only matter when someone is looking at it. Otherwise, it's a wave and not solid at all. In his book, The Holographic Universe, Michael Talbot said, "There is compelling evidence that the only time quanta, or electrons, ever manifest as particles is when we are looking at them. When an electron isn't being looked at, it is always a wave." To put it the other way around, the natural state of an electron is as a wave. It only pops out of its wave state to form a particle in a specific location in space and time when it is being observed. Then, when it's not being observed, it goes back into its wave state. But it turns out that it's not just the electrons that pop in and out of existence. Listen to Dr. Jeffrey Satinover.
Matter is not what we have long thought it to be. The scientist matter has always been thought of as sort of the ultimate in that which is static and predictable. We like to think of space as...
Dr. Satinover said, even the nucleus of an atom, which we think of as so dense, pops in and out of existence just as readily as the electrons do. So it is not only the electrons that exist as waves and then pop into a specific location in space and time when they are observed, but also the nucleus. And the most recent research has even found that whole atoms and molecules do the same thing. Physicist Nick Herbert says this means that the world behind our back, where we are not looking and cannot observe, is always a radically ambiguous and ceaselessly flowing quantum soup. But whenever we turn around and try to see the soup, our glance instantly freezes it and turns it back into reality. Herbert believes this makes us all a little like Midas, the legendary king who never knew the feel of silk or the caress of a human hand, because everything he touched turned to gold. Likewise, we can never really know the true nature of the quantum universe, because every time we try to observe it, it turns into matter. Richard Feynman, a physics professor at the California Institute of Technology, is reported to have said that if you really understand this double-slit experiment, you can understand all of quantum physics. You will hear me say fairly often that one of the best clues or hints about how our universe actually works can be found in our kids' video games. Right now, take a short look at a game called Minecraft.